Chapter 21. A True Hero. I hit a wooden floor hard and grunted. Stasha landed next to me with a groan. Then a loud thud came from behind us, followed by a click. I pulled myself to my feet, which wasn't easy. Both my legs felt like they'd been shattered into a million pieces, and my foot still ached bad. "You okay?" I glanced around. We were alone. One of the guards, a huge, strong kid, I took it, had carried me to his room on a higher floor, in the same wing as the banquet hall. Someone else had carried Stasha. That click must have been the guards locking us inside. She climbed shakily to her feet. "My legs smart a bit, but I think they'll survive." "Tell me about it. Those guys hit us hard. You've got a scratch on your hand, you know." A small, skinny cut that oozed a bit of blood ran along the back of her left hand. "Oh." She frowned and brought her hand up to her face. "It's all right." "Your other one's a little bruised, too. Turn it around so we can check it out." "No, that's all right." "No, come on." "It's quite all right, Gorin." Her voice had an edge. "Don't be silly." I grabbed her bruised wrist and turned it slightly. She squealed and yanked it back. "Get away from me!" The words pummeled me like a bat. She took a few steps back, but I'd seen them. Two thin, dark purple scars streaked side by side along her wrist. "Why in almighty precious power would you touch me like that?" she asked in a high-pitched voice, her eyes glassy. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." "Yeesh. Insecure much? And I saw the scars, you know." Her face grew pale as she stared at me. "What's the matter?" I asked. No answer. "Look," I said. "I don't know why they bother you that much. Oh, come along, Gorin. They're the most hideous imperfections in all Middleton, and you know it. They put my blotchy gray skin to shame." "No, they don't. Not at all. The prettiest girl in town, and she was worried about a couple dumb tiny scars on her wrist. I wanted to tell her that, but instead I said, I think they're cute. Actually, I think they're precious. You lie right through your teeth." But she grinned. "No, I'm dead serious." "If you say so, and if you must know, I received them from the day I gave birth." I wasn't going to ask, but her voice dipped an octave. "The razors had to restrain me quite forcefully, you could say." She covered the scars with her other hand. "That must have really been a rough day," I said, "but they seriously aren't that bad." She locked gazes with me, then managed a small shrug. "I suppose I'll have to take your word for it," she said, though she didn't remove her hand from her scars. "But perhaps we should take stock of where we are rather than ruminate on grotesque scars." I couldn't argue with her there, so we checked out the room. "Not too shabby for a prison, wouldn't you agree?" But considering her words, there was no humor in Stasha's voice. It sounded hollow, dejected. She was probably trying to shed at least a little light on the horrendous situation. A huge bed with silk maroon sheets sat by the windows. A giant mahogany wardrobe with fancy designs etched on it stood on one side of the room, a large desk on the other. On both stood a glass vase and a small marble statuette, one of a man, the other a woman. Silk, light blue curtains lined the windows. I limped over to a window. The sun was high in the sky. I glanced at my watch. 11:30. Looks like we're on the highest floor, and there are no trees which we can climb out on. Not surprised. The guards would want to be certain there are no means of escape. I checked out the backyard with its long diving board and artificial waterfall. The yard looked just as amazing as the first time I saw it, if possible. I guess I don't get it. Except for that, why put us in such a nice room? I mean, you'd think the basement would be a better place, at least. You know, no windows. The way Stasha wrinkled her forehead and squinted at me made me feel a millimeter tall. "This is the Badlux's manor. I imagine this is the shoddiest room they could find on such short notice. Presumably a spare bedroom, and the basement most likely contains far too many priceless entertainment VOs to risk a couple criminals tampering with." Made sense. This room was pretty bare compared to others I'd seen in the manor. The most incredible room ever to a regular Middleton citizen, but the cruddiest to the rulers. Normally I'd scold myself for sounding so stupid in front of Stasha, but I couldn't have cared less. Not now, after we'd failed our mission. A lump formed in my throat. I swallowed it, but another took its place. I can't believe it. I just can't. I definitely would have gotten to that window and climbed down that tree if a stupid monitor hadn't fallen on my foot. Her voice came out soft and comforting. "There's nothing you could have done about that, Gorin. It was merely ill-fated luck." She sat on the edge of the bed. "This whole affair is my fault, really. I should have agreed to evacuate after you froze those initial images of the adults in the banquet hall. Perhaps we could have made it off the property before a mansion-wide investigation had been instigated. But no, I wanted to capture every smidgen of possible evidence, like the harebrained girl I am. No, that was smart. Tears threatened to well in my eyes, but I fought them off. No way I could cry in front of Stasha. Not now. And no way I could let her blame herself for this. Some kids would have definitely had Marf's theory about Badalux's family's secrets, that there were good reasons for them and that there was no point in everybody knowing about them. It was smart to make sure we did the job right and get the strongest proof we could. Her tense features softened. I appreciate that. Speaking of which, I assume the guards have the camera in their possession. I sat next to her on the huge bed, which could have easily been confused with a pile of the softest flowers in the world. Not at all like the lumpy, freakishly uncomfortable mattress in my bedroom back in my faction house, where loose wires never failed to stab me in the night. Actually, no, I said. I got rid of it. Threw it out the hallway window when I had my back to the guards. There's a row of bushes along the side of the mansion. Every side of it, actually. My stupid last-second plan was to try to get the camera to land in them so it wouldn't break. I'm pretty sure the guards didn't see me throw it. Not that it matters now. A smile fought its way through her drooped expression. You're incredible. Are you aware of that? I instinctively leaned my head back as I looked at her. Incredible? How am I incredible? We don't have the camera, the only VO we actually need, and we're locked in a room on the top floor of the mansion with no chance of escaping. She chuckled, and I felt my mouth drop even wider. Seriously, what had gotten into her? Because even in the bleakest of moments, she said, when you knew for certain you'd be captured and it appeared all would be lost, you didn't lose hope. You ditched the camera with the remote chance in mind that somehow we'd escape and recover it. I agree, things look quite dismal now, but you're a true hero, Goran. She laid her head back on my shoulder, and it felt like power surged through my body. Me? A hero? As absurd as it sounded, I couldn't argue with her logic. I had tried everything I possibly could to give us at least a tiny shot of succeeding. Seriously, leave it to her to point out things about me that even I wasn't aware of. I rested my head against hers and sighed. You know, even though I finally got to sneak into the mansion and see some of its incredible VOs and what the Badalux family is really up to, it's not as satisfying as I thought it'd be. She rubbed her hand along my arm, adding another current to my body. That's because you know now that we've been captured. The rulers are going to continue lying to the people of Middleton. You know the citizens are going to continue to suffer in this unjust society, including our poor, dear children. My heart ached, especially at that last point. You have a big heart, Goran. Another reason I like you. I shook my head a little. It rubbed against hers. I just can't believe the rulers are actually using all these precious VOs for their own sick entertainment. She let out an especially disgusted grunt. Believe me, neither can I. Come to think about it, that must be why certain objects were placed so high on the VO list over the years. Whatever the rulers desired most at any given moment, some type of game or exquisite technology that amused them, they declared it was worth a lot of prestige points so that the supply hunters would go out of their way to find it, all under the guise that such objects would help the Badalux family revive power or discover a cure to the plague, or simply that they should be preserved as artifacts of the old world. Again, I couldn't help but feel there was a lot of truth, if not the entire truth, to what she said. So that object that had recently been on the top of the list, I said, you wouldn't know it because it was right before Marf and I ran away from Middleton. That object is just like the one those two men were playing with in the basement. Some kind of game. A real old one. They must want it because they're getting bored with all the other ones they already have. Even the more advanced ones. I'd say so. My stomach tied in knots and the old nausea welled up in it again. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. The rulers are so lazy and selfish. She put her hand on my shoulder. I know. It certainly justifies why they only have one kid securing the Middleton border. All they care about is playing with their precious games and VOs. Why bother to have more people protecting the border when they can utilize as many as they can to find more entertainment? She scoffed loudly. Right. And they might be afraid of the possibility of some other big group of kids with a bunch of advanced weapons attacking Middleton, but they're too selfish and lazy to protect anybody outside their safe, powered fence. It also explains why they use drugs that make girls have twins. This way, instead of girls becoming pregnant twice, which would take approximately 2 years, they can have girls hunt for supplies one of those years. A long silence filled the room as the grotesqueness of it all settled in. Stasha grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Goran, no matter what happens to us, I must tell you I'm so grateful I got to meet you and spend some priceless time with you. All the air gushed from my body. Me too, I murmured in a voice that sounded as weak as the current rulers before they drank the cure. Which is why I must ask, she said. Back when we got separated at the reproduction faction, the day we first met, why didn't you look back? I jerked my head away from hers and stared at her. I did look back. You're the one who didn't look back. Not to mention didn't even want to join Marf and me when we met at the farmhouse. At least not at first. Heat swarmed my face. Did I have to sound like such an insecure moron? A series of deep ridges lined her forehead. I positively did look back at the faction, right after the patrol went by. I stepped out from the tree I'd hid behind, but I didn't see you. Oh, I went a little ways into the woods to be sure they didn't see me. We must have just missed each other, but the clouds grew so large they lifted me into the air. All this time I'd been wondering why she hadn't looked back, but she had. And as for not initially wanting to join you and Marf, she took a deep breath and fiddled with her hair. I must admit I was frightened of you. I almost laughed. You were frightened of me and Marf? Don't you remember how he shrieked and crouched on the ground like a total wimp? Though I felt as bad as soon as I had said it. Poor Marf. And I might never see him again. She chuckled. Who could forget that? No, I mean, her voice grew somber again. I was frightened to reach out to you, to anybody, really. She interlocked both of her hands' fingers so hard they turned white. She looked down at the bed. You see, I've had a history of immensely positive things in my life simply being snagged away from me. Ruthlessly, like our twins, for instance. And that ring I rightfully found and wanted so badly, but which was cruelly ripped away by my razor and my nurture faction. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say, even though I could relate a little. Judd's hanging had been kind of like that, and the fact I might never see Marf again. Her voice grew so low I had to strain to hear it. I had a great childhood friend as well in that nurture faction. We played and did everything together. We were inseparable, essentially. That is, until we'd been forced to transfer to different factions when we became of age. Her lips quivered, and she covered it with her hand. This time I put my hand on her shoulder. All those horrific things together, it was just too much. At the farmhouse I couldn't bear the thought of getting close to you or Marf, just like I had been to those other precious people and things, only for the two of you to be brutally ripped away from me as well. Especially you. I mean, I knew there was something special about you, ever since the first moment I met you at the reproduction faction. My heart turned into a big puffy cloud and my breaths became irregular. I felt the same way about her. And it all explained why she'd been so conflicted when she first met me at the reproduction faction. She clearly wanted to stay and talk with me, but another part of her hadn't wanted to get too close to me. It also explained why she eventually decided to join Marf and me. All her life she'd had great things cruelly taken from her by Middleton, specifically by the Battlelux family, and the last thing I said to try to convince her to come with us was that at least she wouldn't be in Middleton anymore if we lived with the savage tribes. That must have finally pushed her to join us. The rulers couldn't hurt her anymore out there. She removed her hand from her lips and looked up at me. Tears glistened on her cheeks. Which is why I've wanted so badly to tell you for a while not just how much I've appreciated our time together. I wouldn't change it for all of Middleton, or the world for that matter. Not even the old world. My mouth somehow formed words. Neither would I. She closed her eyes and leaned forward. So did I. A loud click rang out. Both our eyes flew open and we jumped to our feet. The bedroom door creaked open and two kids holding handguns stepped inside, followed by a truly massive man with tufts of white hair on his head and countless wrinkles on his face. The greatest warrior in the history of Middleton and the ancestor of the Middleton rulers, Alec Battlelux.